Cricbuzz Live in our association with our partners, my circle, my 11 circle. We're great to have you here today, and we're looking very excited and keen to see what happens in this match between Rajasthan Royals and Bangalore, happening in Mumbai. It's been a great venue for Virat Kohli over the years, that's for sure. And Pommie Mbangwa has joined us. Pommie, where are you situated? You're in Mumbai, but you're not close to the ground.
Well, not right by the ground, but yeah, close enough. Close enough to the ground, and expectation is of a good game, actually, Shaun. I expect that this one will be a good one because Bangalore have started quite well, and there are decent things also being done by Rajasthan. I say decent things all the time. They have glimpses, don't they? Hello, Gautam.
I'm glad you gentlemen started without me. That's good fun. Here we are again, one more time. I'm so glad I've got company from two gentlemen from the south, from the southern part of the wonderful continent of Africa that we so love, because this game is essentially all about a team from the south. I know two teams are playing, but there's going to be a lot of focus on a certain team from the south, and we'll tell you all about it why. One more time, a huge welcome to Cricbuzz Live, brought to you in association with our fantasy partners, My 11th Circle. Delighted to be in the company of Shaun Pollock and Pommie Mbangwa. Namaste, gentlemen.
Namaste. Kaise?
Yes, Gautam, good to see you.
Well, as I said at the start, Shaun, I know it's usually about two teams that are playing a game, but how much is it going to be all about everyone wanting to see what the boys from Bangalore do? Yeah, sure, Rajasthan are there as well.
Yeah, it's going to be big. I mean, obviously a change of venue for them. They head to a different surface. How can they adjust? When I look at it from the outside, I definitely think it's easier for the batters, just to be able to go and adjust and play a couple of net sessions and you should be good to go. The biggest challenge for me is going to be the bowling attack. Because of the surface they played in Chennai, when they run up and hit that area, you can sort of hit anywhere on that pitch in many ways. If you bowl a bit of a cutter or hit a certain length, back of a length, it's quite difficult because of the lack of pace. It stops in the wicket. Your margin for error is huge, basically, compared to what you've normally got in the T20 format. And I think with the bowlers heading back to Mumbai now, I think it's going to be a different kettle of fish. I think they're really going to have to keep their lines and lengths in superb spot on places. And we saw what happened last night. Guys running up, just getting smashed to all parts, the ball coming on beautifully. And batsmen being able to really be destructive compared to where they've struggled a little bit in Chennai. So I think also it will help Bangalore at the top of the order. Kohli hasn't fired quite so successfully as we've come to expect from him over the years. Padikkal at the top of the order will like the ball coming on as well. And then it'll be interesting to see if the guys who weren't from Chennai can adapt.
Yeah, we've got some numbers that we're going to put up for you and have a look at these for a start. And this is Bangalore's bowlers. Now, often we talk about adjusting up or adjusting down. Some teams have moved from Mumbai to Chennai. Hasn't been easy. We've seen that. What about moving the other way around vis-a-vis this, Pommie?
Yeah, look, I've thought about that, and Shaun is alluding to it a little bit there in terms of, adjusting things as bowlers with regard to where you bowl on the surface. What it has been in Mumbai is it's been a hitting fest. It's been, true wicket that bounces nicely where if you don't quite get it right and you're trying to use the wicket, you're going to get whacked out the ground. Even when you do bowl slow balls, if you've got a guy who's set and is in, it's pretty difficult to contain it. I think, therefore, that, the deliveries that will probably, if you bowl them right, and this should be the proviso that goes with absolutely everything we say, is if you get it right, if you execute well enough, if you go for deliveries such as Yorkers, and whether you're going straight Yorker, wide Yorker, I think you'd be more successful, sort of cut out a side of the ground, try and make batsmen hit to a certain area. They can clear the fence. There's no question about that. So I expect that, the difficulty just gets more and more if you're bowlers coming from Chennai and going to Mumbai.
Exactly. I mean, it's just the opposite for batsmen. And I'm in the company of two gentlemen who spent plenty of time with ball in hand. Shaun, assuming you were in Mumbai bowling at the death, even when you're bowling against a guy like Pat Cummins, I mean, it's one thing to have an A.B. de Villiers or a Glenn Maxwell or Kohli set, but a Pat Cummins comes in with all due respect to his batting ability. He starts hitting you for 30 in an over. You know that it's a difficult place to bowl.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, we often see it in Test cricket, don't we? We'll see a partnership by 9 and 10 or 10 and 11. And people go, oh, look how well they did. And you sort of think, well, maybe just the conditions were really good. Maybe they've got a little bit better. Maybe it's got easier for batting. And there's no doubt. I mean, we've seen Cummins over the years. He has that ability to strike. But to be able to strike so consistently, to be able to put them under pressure like he did, and then on the back of Dreras, I mean, he just decided second ball, I'm going to go. He didn't miss hit one, did he? I mean, he basically, every time he went after it, the only mistake he made was leaving the ball that hit his stumps. But it was one of those kind of surfaces, and very rarely do you get them in T20s or in one-day international career where you walk in, you decide, I'm going to pull the trigger. And when you do pull that trigger, it just seems like nothing can go wrong. And no matter what they tried, all the variations, the dew played its part. I think it is going to be tough going. And that's why I'm wondering how the Bangalore team will adjust. I think the key for me is Chahal. I saw what he did the other night, and he seems to be finding some form. He's hit a bit of a lull. I mean, been left out a lot of the Indian teams. You can see he's lacking in that confidence. But funny enough for me, I've always looked at him as a bowler who actually bowls better on more difficult conditions for leg spinners than he does on ripping turners. He's that kind of guy who just likes to hit it straight, get it to skid on, attack the stumps, and not necessarily a big turner of the ball. So I think he'll go better. We saw in Bangalore over the years how good a player he's been for them on those conditions, which are really difficult to bowl on. Small ground, altitude, and the guy's just able to hit through. So I think he's going to be a big player in the middle over today.
Yeah, interesting. We're going to, of course, update you with the toss. It's been a fun toss, I can tell you, because both captains rushed towards Ian Bishop, wondering who's won the toss. But we will confirm to you between the swapping of pink and red who it is. But it is, in fact, Virat Kohli, who was being very polite to Sanju Samson and said, "Aap pehle," as we tend to do in this part of the world. Shaun, it means you first.
Okay, aap pehle.
Yeah,
sounds good.
But it is Virat Kohli who said, okay, fine. If you really insist I've won the toss, I will go forward. I will choose to bowl. Absolute no-brainer, Shaun, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, I think chasing has been so difficult, and particularly with the side coming in. In many ways, you want them just to settle into the game, and then see what the surface is all about, and know what pace they have to go at. Because sometimes when you change venues and you think, okay, well, we've got to get 200, you start to go and pull the trigger far too early. Whereas once they know what they have to chase, they can adjust it accordingly and see what pace they have to go at.
Not a good result for a team who are just looking to find their feet, in a sense, Pommie. If they're the team they're the team who can make 200, but the problem again, as Shaun said, when you try to go for 200, it's where you end up with 130 rather than even 170.
Yeah, I mean, that is the conundrum for absolutely every team when it comes to this format of the game, in that, you turn up at the ground, as Rajasthan are today, you turn up at the ground and you've just watched a game where a couple of teams have got over 200. And so you're thinking, well, what is a good score to set? And therefore, there is a minimum in your mind. However, you've got to be aware of the fact that, on any given day you turn up, it might not be exactly the same as was the day before. So you still have to lay those foundations. You still have to go through what the processes are in terms of setting up a platform and then going from there. And when teams get to 200 and 220 and these big scores, essentially what happens is that somebody gets in, a couple of guys get in, and they manage to bat a long time. So that's important. You don't just go from the word go and end up getting there. Sometimes it'll happen, as Shaun spoke about. You'll get surfaces that are like that, where it works that way. But I think you have to make sure that you're batting, aiming for what is a decent score, and then reassessing as you go along to then ensure that you can, launch and get to what might be 200, what might be 210, 220. We don't know. Perhaps they'll push the boundaries. And I also think that whilst there's that pressure, there's almost no pressure, if you know what I mean, because you're setting a score, so you're not being asked to bat at a certain rate. You can decide yourself as you go to say, well, how quickly do I go? How hard do I go out? And you can incrementally go towards it rather than have to go from the start when there's 220 on the board.
Yeah, they had problems, of course. It was their best effort really in the tournament has come in a losing cause with that fabulous 100 from Sanju Samson. But it's everybody else. Butler has shown brief glimpses. He belongs at the top of the order. They've lost key players. There's no Stokes, there's no Archer. But Shaun Pollock, the real crux for them will be something Pommie mentioned a moment ago, is about spending time out there and batting, not thinking you've got to score 50 of 12 balls. Not everyone does that. Their key players like Manan Vora in the middle, the young Indian batsmen, haven't fired. That has to change.
Yeah, they haven't. And, when you talk about Vora, you talk about Dubé, you talk about Parag, you talk about Tavatia, we all know they can make contributions. I mean, the ability, we've seen it over the years gone by. But often it comes down to when you've had a good season and then you return for the next one, how do you live up to that expectation? How do you deal with the different responsibility that's thrown onto your shoulders? And they haven't been able to do it. I mean, there's the total runs, 35, 42, 30. In the space of 3 games, that's not enough. The 25 of 11, that might do a job, or the 23 or 15, that might do a job. But they do need the middle order to fire, particularly now with all the injuries that have taken place. And I think we've seen it throughout the tournament as well. You can throw in other examples, someone like a Padikal, Ishan Kishan, Goodwat. They all struggled again for the first few games. And the reason is because you go home, you've had a good season, it's slaps on the back, it's high fives all around. And then you get to the start of the next season, you suddenly realize, hold on, I've actually got to do this job again. It's not a case. And that's why your consistent players, your international guys who just come in season after season and keep producing are so valuable, because the youngsters, they might find the magic formula for a month or two, but then they sort of forget what they did. And they have to go back to the basics, as Pommie said, and, really give themselves time to get in. And sometimes it can be the worst thing, can be the fact that it's a high-scoring ground. Because they don't give themselves those 2 or 3 deliveries. They think, well, I've got to go. Everyone else is just whacking it. I've got to come in and go. And that's when they don't get themselves in and they don't get the kind of scores that they're after.
I think it's about keeping faith. We're going to have a look at the teams in a moment. I'll stay with this for a moment, Pommie. A big example was Rituraj Gaikwad. A lot of youngsters not doing well. And for all of them, I think if we agree, Gaikwad was the worst. He looked the worst out of form. Game 1, he couldn't get the ball off the square. They kept faith with him. They said, you're our man at the top of the order. Look what he delivered.
Yeah, so yesterday when we were talking with Joy and Gaurav, I was saying that he's a curious one for me. I mean, you remember, go back to last season where he had COVID and so was locked up for ages whilst everybody else got out of the hotel and got into the tournament. And when he finally did get to play, he looked so out of sorts. I think he got a couple of ducks in a row or something like that, and he just looked like everyone's sort of going, hold on, this is the guy they've been talking about, saying he's going to be okay for us and is a young player and is quite good. And you kind of thought, no, they've made a mistake. When he got runs, absolute chalk and cheese. It's unbelievable. And I don't think I've seen anyone who looks so out of sorts when they're trying to get themselves started and then looks just so good when they're going. With many guys, you can still see that, yeah, he's okay. He's just trying to get himself going and it looks like he's organized. It looks like everything's okay. But with Gaikwad, it's wow. You have to know, and Chennai know this, right? They know how good he is. They've kept faith with him. 4 50s now? And when you look at those 50s, amazing innings. They just are touch and power from a guy who's like this thin, is so little, and yet he smashes at miles as he did yesterday. So I think it's a blessing in disguise for Rajasthan that they don't have many to pick from. and yes, it's a curse that you might look at it and say, oh, it's a curse. We're our players. We don't have too many choices. But they have to stick with guys. And with the theme you're going on, I think it is important to stick with guys. What they must deal with, the young Indian players, is the pressure of expectation. But at least that pressure of expectation is somewhat alleviated by the fact that, well, you're actually going to play. Get it right. Get out there, do it, find a way. And they have to swim. There's no other way, no options.
Yeah, I can tell you all the 3 names we mentioned are very much in the pool. They're going to have to swim. Let's confirm the teams. There's one change on each side. Let's start with the men in pink. And one very interesting change there, and I think it's horses for courses, gentlemen, because Shreyas Gopal replaces Jaydev Unadkat, and I think it's got a lot to do with the opposition, Shaun, because Shreyas Gopal, Bangalore boy, of course, has dismissed Virat Kohli 3 times and AB de Villiers 4 times in a space of 28 deliveries.
It's the new catchword, isn't it? Matchups. You've got to have matchups. You've got to have the right matchup. So he gets in, and Unadkat got to feel a little bit hard done by. Or was it 2 games ago he got man of the match? Oh, gosh. Anyway, but we'll have to see how he gets on. But it is about matchups, and I must admit, even in my days, we used to try and play on a few matchups. It was often countrymen against countrymen. But obviously, when they've got stats like this, they'll wonder, gee, why did they pick this guy? And maybe someone will say, well, he's got a pretty good record against you. So make sure you concentrate. I also think Virat Kohli is going to be fired up today. Sure, he's going to be fired up because I think he loves the way his team going. He loves the success that Bangalore's had. But he's a competitive individual. He doesn't like being third fiddle in the pecking order to the contributions that have been made so far. He wants to be back up there, getting big scores, leading from the front, taking his team over the line. And it's been Maxwell and de Villiers who've done the job. So I think he'll be dead keen to get in, put in a big performance. And he loves batting at the one kitty.
Interesting dynamics Shaun Pollock mentioned. Kohli doesn't like playing third fiddle, and the secret to Maxwell's success this season is that he's enjoyed playing third fiddle in terms of expectation. He never liked being that one icon player. He's number 1, Kohli, number 2, de Villiers, number 3, Maxwell. Thank you very much. I shall deliver quietly. What about their team changes? They've made one change. Rajat Patidar goes out, and in comes their 4th foreigner. In this case, Kane Richardson gets his first game this season, and that's going to be an interesting change. They've obviously looked at someone, Pommie, who can maybe deliver in Mumbai when everybody else will be probably running scared.
Yeah, I don't know about running scared, but it's the job. You got to do it. And Kane Richardson comes with experience of Mumbai as well, albeit not a great deal of it, but he has experience of Mumbai. So there are reference points for him in terms of bowling at the Wankhede. And yeah, is a good operator. I think what you want in situations that are going to be particularly tough for bowlers is to have hardened guys, to have guys who know that it's going to be tough and are able to be philosophical about it and still think clearly under the pressure should they come under it. And if they come under the pressure, they know, well, okay, this is what I do here when this happens. And so this is going to be the plan. This is what we're going to try and do. A bit of pace, a bit of bounce on the surface. Try that, see if it works. If it doesn't, well, then we've got to take pace off and get right in the block hole, get wide of the guys, get out of their arcs, all of that. And it comes with a lot of bowling, a lot of cricket played. So, yeah, I think it's the experience that they are going for.
Well, Gautam, I was having a look at an article on the Cricbuzz Plus app, and it was talking about the Mumbai mantra and how they've really worked things out to try and to be successful. And then I was thinking about the 2 surfaces that we played on, and both their teams that they picked, Chennai, the unit that they picked to play, I mean, how good would they have been in Chennai? They haven't been able to play there, but how good would they have been in Chennai? Mumbai is the perfect unit for that kind of surface that they've got at the Wankhede Stadium. The ball comes on, they've got guys in the middle order at the top of the order who love the ball coming on, and they would have performed brilliantly. But when I look at the Bangalore team now, it seems to have a little bit more of that Mumbai mantra to it in many ways, because the balance just seems to be better. The hitting ability down the order, now that you've got Kohli at the top, Maxwell comes at 4, AB at 5, you've got Sundar, you've got Jamison. it's got that depth now, and also the bowling seems to have a bit more of a variation. You've got Jamison, who's going to get you bounce. You've got Chahal, who bowls your leggies, who's been really good. You've got Suraj, who's really starting to believe in himself. Harsha Patel's being given a job of what he's going to do. And now Kane Richardson comes in, and as Pommie talks about, has got the experience there. And I think he'll go pretty well. So it all just looks a little bit more like a proper mantra. And I think they've got their team right for these conditions. Maybe they haven't had enough time to prepare for the conditions, but as far as the personnel that they've decided to pick for today, I think they've got it right.
Yeah, well, you heard it from Shaun Pollock. If he has got hooked onto Cricbuzz Plus, I think all of you will enjoy it as well. Lots of extra information, articles, interviews. That's the place to be. So go out there and subscribe. We promise you, you won't regret it. What you will also not regret is making sure that with about 15 minutes to go to the start of play, you make your changes to your My 11 Circle teams. You don't need any reminders of how to do it, but just in case, download the app, get your 11 in place, pick a captain, pick a vice captain, and get going. Yes, indeed, as you can see, I'm trying to do exactly that at the moment, getting my captain and vice captain in place, because it's very important you pick the right guys for the right job. But we try and help you out. We get our team together and we have our My 11 Circle smart picks for you. And let's go through them real quick with Pommie and Shaun. Our first pick, and you might just imagine that, it doesn't have to be always a left field pick. But Shaun, you mentioned Virat Kohli, he'd be hungry, and all the more hungry when someone of his class hasn't got as many as he'd like.
Yeah, average. Look at that average at this ground. It's pretty impressive. 350 strike rate's brilliant, and hunger. As I say, he wants to be also one of the big main men contributing, winning games, and he'll feel like this is his opportunity. The ball coming on, I think it's also ideal because it just allows him to get into his innings. He doesn't have to force the issue. If he plays 2 or 3 shots, normal cricket shots to start his innings off, he'll be underway. The ball should come on. It'll be just fine. So I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, but well before he gets into his stride, of course, they will be fielding first. He'll have another one of his colleagues who will be in focus with ball in hand. Yuzvendra Chahal, again, like Virat Kohli, Pommie, hasn't really performed the way we've seen him in previous seasons with 3 furs and 4 furs for fun.
I really like the point that Shaun made that, that on good surfaces for spinners where it's spinning a great deal, where you might look and say, Chahal's going to kind of rip it past people's bats here. He hasn't really thrived that much. But where it's tough, where you expect that guys are going to go at him and they should get the wood over him or should have the wood over him, he seems to thrive. He seems to be able to not so much second guess, but have a sixth sense of what the guys are trying to do when they come up against him. And even if he doesn't get big hauls of wickets, what he does, he gets an important wicket, breaks a partnership, and in classic fashion, like he'll get a stumping where it'll just rip past the bat from nowhere. He'll beat somebody in the flight. He's a good bowler, and because he hasn't performed, I think there's a side that are just going to catch it at some point where he's going to come right and he's going to get into his groove. Season after season, we've seen him. I've actually, season after season, picked him as the most valuable in their bowling lineup. He has been. He's always been the guy who's done it. So despite others not going so well at the death, difficulties with their bowling group as a whole, he has stood out all the time. So I expect that this season, somewhere along the line, someone will catch it and he'll hit some form and do good things. And when he does that, this balanced side that they have, and no doubt they'll be, reaping rewards from that.
Guys, and one thing I must add to that is that of my years at Mumbai Indians, he wasn't playing much. And he spent his life bowling in those nets in the middle. His absolute life. He was given the ball at the start of practice and he was there at the end. And the funny thing is he bowled against all the great players who were playing for Mumbai at that time. And he learned the art of how to be effective. And I promise you, I used to often watch the net session and how often the big stars, your Pollards, whoever they were, used to go after him. They used to run at him and try and whack him. And all of them used to just whack it straight up into the air. So in many ways, the Mumbai surface, I think, will suit him. And although he didn't play much there, the experience that he's gained, he's bowled more than enough deliveries to know what the right length at the Mumbai Wankhede Stadium is.
Yeah, look out for Yuzvendra Chahal. But Shaun, I'm going to come straight to you with our next smart pick because, again, it's been a strange old tale of David Miller, no matter which franchise he plays for. When he's got the opportunity, he's found a situation, he's played a really big innings. This time, I think, with the loss of Jofra, with the loss of Ben Stokes, it's been huge for David Miller.
Yeah, it is. I mean, as I said in the last time we were covering one of their games, he's come into this tournament on the back of good form. We haven't seen him play really brilliantly for South Africa, but in the Pakistan series, he had a couple of knocks there where he was really good. So he comes in with good form. He's got one performance under the belt already. And, you know, and as I mentioned on the other show too, he's a fantastic guy to have in those middle batting, in the middle of the batting order, because those youngsters will really thrive and really enjoy batting with him. And they'll take a lot of confidence and they'll learn a lot from him. And he's one of those guys he's a nice team man in the middle overs. You know, he makes you believe in what you're going to try and do. And he boosts you in the middle there when you're trying to do the job. The other thing I think is going to work in his favor is he doesn't actually have to look over his shoulder anymore because of the injuries. You know, his spot's not in jeopardy. He's one of those seasons now where he can just settle in and say, okay, I'm here to do the job. I'll probably play most of the games from here on in. Let me continue in the good touch I've been in South Africa and the one game I've had here so far where I went well. And, you know, and he'll probably take on that responsibility. He's at that stage of his career too, where he's more than prepared to take on the responsibility of what's required of him at any innings and in any team.
And something to add with that actually is that, you know, where you might have thought in the past that Miller comes in and smashes it from ball one, finishes off things, he's done quite a bit of repairing innings and just playing what is a normal inning. So not trying to whack the ball as hard as ever. He naturally does that anyway. But there's a certain confidence in the way that he's played and you can tell there's a difference in him hitting the ball hard and just getting started in an innings. And then when he's really on song and finishing things off, having sort of batted through an innings and, you know, hitting boundaries at the back end. There's a maturity to the way that he bats or looks to bat these days. And I think that Rajasthan will reap the rewards of that from the point that Shaun makes as well, that he isn't thinking about, oh, if I don't, then so-and-so will play. He is actually first choice, whether that's by default or not, it doesn't matter. What it does is it frees his mind and allows him to just think how to construct the innings that he needs to each time that he goes out on the different surfaces that he encounters.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think we at the start of the show, remember we talked about the youngsters in pink, the likes of Riyan Parag and Manan Vora, sort of maybe feeling a little safer because you don't have such a big pool to choose from. But I think just to complete this point about David Miller, it's not just the Indian players. It's not a bad thing, even if an international player can feel secure about his spot, even if it's for the wrong reasons in this case.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also his relationship with Morris, might be important as they go along, because there might be the odd innings that they have to try and put on together. I saw a picture on the app the other day about the two of them sitting there and shoulder or arm over shoulder and feeling the love. And I think that's also important, because I think Morris will be feeling the pressure. So if he can find a partner that he can express himself with, and they can form a bit of a relationship and partnership in the middle to lower order, that could also help the young Indian guys. So, it's a good situation.
Yeah, it certainly is. But one interesting point is, even though they won't be batting immediately, is the good news for Bangalore batting in general. I mean, they've come to Mumbai. At the start of the show, we talked about the transition for bowlers, the transition for batsmen. Obviously, it's going to be a good thing for batsmen. But if you've already come from a place that's not too bad, Because if you're going from Bangalore to Chennai as a batting unit, you're thinking, okay, like Punjab, we've got to do something about it. But for these guys, they haven't done too badly in Chennai. Of all the teams who have played in Chennai, they have not been the worst, Pommie.
They've been fantastic. They have been absolutely fantastic. Their batting, so many times we'd say, just de Villiers and Kohli, just de Villiers and Kohli, game after game, and then we'll talk about their bowling. They haven't quite got enough, these guys. They've got too much pressure on them, over-reliance. It's been magnificent how Maxwell has been able to, get runs and seem so in control. That's the thing. He seems so in control each time he's gone out there. And does it free them all up? Yes, it frees them all up. I mean, 39 from 28, 59 from 41, 79 from 49. He is whacking sixes. It's the Glenn Maxwell that everybody pays money for. In case he does this, let's pay him $2 million. They've paid it, they've got him, and he is doing it. And I tell you what, yes, AB de Villiers is also winning games, at the other end, and he's also chipping in. But if these guys can kind of alternate and play as they're playing through the season, it might be number one then for RCB. Too early to say, I know. But if these guys can have some sort of form, it could be number one for them.
Spare a thought for Punjab.
I was just going to ask you that.
They were called Kings 11 in those days. Were they Kings 11? He didn't hit 1-6. He didn't hit 1-6. He's got 6 in 3 matches. Yeah, exactly. But they must be thinking, oh my gosh, we had that guy in our ranks and we couldn't get him to fire at all. We've given him up. We put him back in the auction. We felt like people probably paid too much for him. Yep. And now he's come out firing in 3 games. They must be sitting, oh my gosh, what to do?
It's crazy though, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy how that works. Because, I mean, and it's not that we've not seen fireworks from Maxwell. We have. And the difficulty, I think, over the years has been, yes, what you can get, but it seems a bit of a gamble because if you go according to record, he's not been consistent at all in terms of delivering what he has as ability and the potential. However, that's kind of what you've got to take with it, in that it's not a case of if he plays like this, he can deliver game after game after game. The game is so high risk that you don't expect that he's going to deliver every time. The issue, though, is that having kept him for that long and nothing coming but 1 or 2 innings somewhere along the line, it must be heartbreaking. It really must be.
I know at Mumbai we used to panic about who we let go, and like, please don't let them come back to bite us. You want to just keep the ones who are going to consistently perform. But I think more importantly, I know it's getting to the late part of the show and we're going to have to try and guess the score. I need to see, we must have a graphic there about runs that have scored, because as you said, they were the best in Chennai. They've gotten the most runs. And I need to have a look at the boundary count that we've got here at Mumbai compared to Chennai, because we need to work out what we think they can do and whether they can adjust to the bounce.
And what is it, 35 and 26 yesterday? 35 and 26 yesterday.
Sixes yesterday. There you go. They've been 83 in Chennai, 108 in Mumbai, and those 26 happened yesterday. So basically that's the difference between the two. 2 less games in Mumbai. Okay, so I've got to add, so there's going to be over 2.5 sixes and the extra 4s. Okay, I've got it. I've got my number in my head. But anyway, Gautam, you go.
Are you still calculating?
Have you worked out what your number is? Have you decided?
Yeah, I've got it in my head. I know where I'm going.
Okay, and you're keeping it a secret. You're not telling anyone.
Well, Gautam hasn't given us the official go-ahead yet.
Okay, all right.
Hold that thought. Maybe we'll get our joy factor question in first.
All right,
give you a little more time to stew, and then we'll come back to the scores. Make those calculations, Shaun. You need to get it spot on. It's going to be a high-scoring game. Joy factor question for today on this royal evening. In this event, which team was in the losing side when a team last chased down a total of over 150 after losing 5 wickets in the power play? Right.
So
there you go. Don't give anything away at the moment, but obviously we need to think back to maybe yesterday, think of what possibly can happen, but so much can happen. Could we have a 200 plus total today, or is that stating the obvious? Shaun Pollock, are you not going to go first?
I'll go first.
Right.
Because Rajasthan's batting first, I haven't got the massive amount of confidence in them, so I'm going 180.
Oh, right. I'm going 197.
What? Fair enough. But I'm actually going lower. I just somehow I feel that they are going to be interested. They're going to be excited. They're going to be enthusiastic, but they're going to lose wickets in that quest for desperate runs, and they'll finish off 165 or less.
Watch out for Josh Butler.
He
might cut loose, I think.
He might. How long for is the question. But he also likes batting in Mumbai, but lots to look forward to. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been entertaining. It's been fun. And of course, we're going to have your company for the rest of the evening, as we will for all of you. 10th over, Cricbuzz Combox. And this has been yet another exciting edition, a royal edition of Cricbuzz Live, brought to you in association with our fantasy partners, My 11 Circle.